My family humiliated me for being fat, but when I lost weight and went to my sister's wedding, they demanded I gain it back. Most of my baby pictures look like someone messed up the camera angle and forgot to fix it, like the lens was always a little too zoomed in whenever I was in the frame. My mother used to joke that I was just big for my age, but by the time I hit elementary school, everybody had stopped pretending it was cute. Kids don't care about medical charts or body mass indexes. They just see someone who looks different and decide that's the target of the day. So while other kids were running around the playground, I was the one pretending I liked sitting on the bench with a book. Because if I acted like I wanted to play and they rejected me, that hurt a lot more than saying I just did not feel like it. I got good at pretending things did not bother me. I pretended I did not hear the comments about how I took up the whole hallway, or how the plastic chair squeaked a little when I sat down because it really was too small. I pretended I did not mind eating alone at lunch, pretending I was fascinated by whatever book I had propped open in front of me. I pretended I did not see the way kids moved their trays when I tried to sit near them. If you pretend hard enough, sometimes it feels like reality, until you go home and cry into your pillow and hope no one hears you. My sister did not have that problem. She is 1 year younger than me and somehow won the genetic lottery and the social lottery at the same time. Where I was quiet, she was loud. Where I was awkward, she was effortless. Where I blended into a corner, she lit up any room she walked into. Growing up, I told myself that was fine, that I did not need what she had. I was the smart one. I read chapter books early, I brought home straight A's, and teachers loved me. Adults would say things like, "She is going places," and my parents ate that up. I honestly believed for a long time that being the smart one was enough, that if I just kept my head down and did everything right, things would eventually even out. I'd have my little career, my little apartment, maybe a partner one day that actually saw me, and it would not matter that I spent my childhood being the punchline. It is kind of funny, in a dark way, how long you can cling to a fantasy like that. At home, I saw my sister as my responsibility. I am the older one, right? That is what we are taught. Protect your little sister, keep her out of trouble, help her with homework, let her copy your answers sometimes if she is struggling. I walked her to school when we were kids. I cut the crust off her sandwiches. I let her have the last cookie even when I wanted it. I thought we were a team. I thought whatever happened out there in the world, at least inside our house, we would be on the same side. I was very wrong. Middle school was bad, but high school was where things really sharpened. I had already developed a whole routine. Walk fast, keep eyes down, carry my books tight to my chest, avoid standing anywhere people could accidentally bump into me. People had their nicknames, their comments, their little jokes. I knew who to avoid and which routes got me between classes with the least amount of exposure. That is how you start thinking when you grow up fat. You think in escape routes and angles in which clothes will cling less, and which shirts might make you look less huge in photos. When my sister started at the same high school a year after me, I was weirdly excited. I imagined us walking to school together, maybe sitting at lunch sometimes, at least having someone who knew me beyond the caricature everyone else saw. I told her which teachers were strict, which ones were fair, which hallways got crowded, all the older sibling survival tips. She listened, nodded, smiled, and for a moment I really thought, okay, maybe this year won't be so bad. She got popular in about a week. I am not even exaggerating. 1 week. She joined some club, started sitting with the kids who always looked like they were in some teen show. And it was like watching someone slide into a space that had been pre-reserved for them. People leaned in when she talked. They laughed at her stories. They invited her to things. Teachers called on her and smiled too long when she answered, even when she was wrong. I'd walk by and hear my name thrown in there like a footnote, like, "Yeah, my sister is a total brainiac. She gets all the A's," said with this tone that was half proud and half annoyed. At first, she still waved at me in the hall. She'd throw a quick, "Hey," across the lockers, or stop by my table in the cafeteria for a second to grab a fry or complain about homework. But over the next few months, the waves got smaller, the visits got shorter, and then they just stopped. One day I walked into the cafeteria and saw her at the popular table, laughing with some girl who used to moo at me when I walked past, and when our eyes met, she looked away like she did not know me. That one stung. I told myself she just did not see me. Denial is a powerful drug. The thing is, it did not stop at pretending she did not know me. That would have been cruel enough. It escalated in this slow, ugly way that feels obvious in hindsight. I'd hear my nickname, the one the other kids used for me, come out of her mouth when she was standing with her friends near the lockers. My sister is so dramatic. She cries over everything. She is so sensitive. She eats like she is training for a marathon. She literally takes up half the couch. Little digs, dressed up as jokes. One afternoon in the cafeteria, I was carrying this overloaded tray because the lunch lady had piled everything on one side. And as I walked past my sister's table, one of her friends stuck out a foot. It was subtle enough that if you did not know what you were looking at, you'd think it was an accident. I stepped right into it, my ankle twisted, and my tray went flying. Pasta, sauce, milk, everything all over my shirt, my face, the floor. The whole room went quiet for a second, then exploded in laughter. My sister did not help me up. She did not even look horrified. She laughed with them. That sound, the sound of her laughing at me with the others, is something I will never forget. I remember standing there, my hands shaking, my face burning, and thinking, okay, this is it. This is the exact moment something breaks. I went home that day and told my parents everything. I told them about the comments, about my sister ignoring me, about the accidental trip. I thought finally, they'll understand how bad this is. They'll talk to her, set some rules, make it clear that behavior like that is not okay. That is what parents are supposed to do, right? They shrugged. My mother said, "You know how teenagers are, they tease. It is normal." My father said, "Maybe if you did not react so strongly, they would stop. You need to grow a thicker skin." Then my mother added the classic, "And you could stand to lose a little weight. Honey, you know that. High school is brutal. It would be easier for you if you tried." So, just to recap, I got laughed at by half the school, betrayed by my sister, and then went home and got told to be less sensitive and smaller. I wish I could say that was the worst of it, but unfortunately, there's more. Once my sister realized nobody was going to stop her, things at home turned into an extension of school. She would bring her friends over and they'd wander into my room without knocking, flop onto my bed, pick up my notebooks, flip through my sketchbook. They'd make comments like, "Wow, she really is obsessed with school," or, "Do you think this chair is going to break?" said while staring at me dead in the eye. They'd open my closet and laugh at my clothes, at how many oversized hoodies I had. My room stopped being my safe place and became just another arena where I had to be on guard. I went to my parents again. I told them I did not want her friends in my room. I said they were mean to me. I said they made comments about my body, about my clothes. My mother sighed and told me I was overreacting. "They are just joking. You need to be more chill." My father added that my sister was finally coming out of her shell, finally social, finally normal, and that I should be happy for her instead of jealous. Jealous. That word stuck in my throat like a fishbone. I was not jealous of being laughed at. I was not jealous of being allowed to treat someone else like garbage. I was jealous of her safety, sure, of her not having to calculate every step, of her having space to exist without everyone telling her to shrink. But nobody wanted to hear that nuance. It was easier to paint me as the bitter older sister with a chip on her shoulder. The weird twist in all of this is that while they ignored everything else, my parents loved talking about my grades. They'd show off my report cards to any relative who stood still long enough. "Look at this. Straight A's again. Honor roll every year. We must be doing something right," they'd say, as if my academic performance was a certificate of good parenting. They'd compare my test scores to my sister's right in front of her, and then act shocked when her face tightened and she snapped at me later. I did not connect the dots at the time. I did not see how they were feeding this resentment. I just thought my sister hated me on some deep level I could not fix. Then the sabotage started. Looking back, there were signs. I'd spend hours working on a paper, save it, and then somehow the file would be gone the next day. I'd hit print on a project, hear the printer in the hall, and when I went to pick it up, the tray would be empty. I'd leave my notebook open on my desk and come back from the bathroom to find it closed and shoved out of place. Little things, annoying things, things I blamed on myself being forgetful or clumsy. One night, I pulled an almost all-nighter to finish this huge assignment that was worth a big chunk of my grade. I printed it, set it nicely on top of my bag, and crashed. The next morning it was gone. Not fallen on the floor, not stuck between books. Gone. I tore my room apart. I was shaking, panicking, sure I'd somehow misplaced it. I ended up running to school and telling the teacher I was so sorry. I must have left it at home. She let me email it later, but docked some points. Things like that kept happening. A missing flash drive. A folder mysteriously wet on the bottom like someone had spilled water on it. A textbook with pages ripped out. I told myself I was just overwhelmed. I told myself I was careless. My parents agreed. "You need to be more organized," they said, while my sister watched from the couch with this little smirk she thought I did not see. Years later, at some family dinner when we were all older and everyone had had too much wine, My sister laughed and said, "Do you remember how I used to delete your assignments and hide your homework? I was so petty." She said it like a cute childhood story, like it was funny. She even put her hand on my arm like we were bonding. I sat there, my fork halfway to my mouth, and realized in 1 second that so many of those nights, so many of those tears, were not my fault at all. She had done it on purpose. On purpose. Her friends laughed. My parents said, "Oh my gosh, you were terrible," and moved on. No apology. No, hey, that could have ruined her chances. Just, wow, kids, right? After high school, I got out. That is the only way I can describe it. I got a scholarship to a university a few hours away, not far enough to need a plane, but far enough that my parents could not just show up. I moved into a dorm and stood in that small, weirdly painted room and realized for the first time that nobody there knew me as the fat sister or the smart one or the one who cries. I was just some girl trying to figure out how to do her own laundry. College was not some magical makeover story. I did not suddenly become thin or wildly popular or healed, but I did find people who liked me without needing me to shrink. I found a couple of friends who did not care that I always ordered dessert. We studied together, watched dumb shows, stayed up late talking about our families. We all had our own messes. For the first time, I was not the only one. I kept in touch with my family in this surface-level way. Holiday calls, texts on birthdays, the occasional visit where I'd sleep in my old room and try not to notice how little had changed. My sister and I were polite. We hugged hello, traded basic updates, and then went back to orbiting separate corners of the house. I told myself that was enough, that not fighting was the same as peace. After graduation, I ended up in a mid-sized city in another state, working as an office coordinator for a small company that did something with numbers and software that I pretended to understand better than I did. It was not glamorous, but it paid the bills. I had a tiny apartment with creaky floors and loud neighbors, a grocery store down the street, and a routine that belonged only to me. I bought my own furniture, my own dishes, my own bedding that nobody else had ever slept in. That kind of independence is underrated if you come from a house where nothing ever really felt like it belonged to you. I did not go back home much. Distance makes it easier to pretend everything is fine. If you are only talking a few times a year, you can ignore a lot. I knew my parents still honestly believed they had sacrificed everything for us, and that any criticism was ingratitude. I knew my sister was still the social sun they orbited around. I focused on my little life instead. Then, last summer, my mother called me and said, "You have not visited in so long. We miss you. Why do you stay away?" She said it like I was the one breaking something. I heard myself say, "Okay, I will come down for a weekend." Part of me was curious. Part of me was tired of feeling like the ghost daughter. When I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in, everything looked the same. Same paint. Same crack in the front step they always promised to fix. Same flower pots my mother rotated seasonally like she was changing outfits on the house. Walking through the front door felt like stepping onto an old set. My room still had the same faded posters and the same dent on the side of the bed from when I sat in the exact same spot for years. They did the full reunion performance. My mother hugged me a little too tight. My father clapped me on the shoulder and asked about work. My sister came in from the kitchen with a dramatic, "Look who finally decided to show up." I laughed and hugged her and tried not to think about cafeteria floors and spilled milk. We sat down for lunch and it was almost nice. For a while, it was just random updates. My father's back pain, my mother's neighbor who was always in everyone's business, my sister's job at some boutique place in town. I talked a bit about my office, my coworkers, the fact that I had finally learned to make a decent stir-fry. We were all pretending to be normal. Then my sister cleared her throat and said, "So, I have an announcement." She held up her left hand, and there it was, this shiny ring that caught the light like it was trying to blind everyone. My mother gasped. My father said, "Well, I will be." My sister grinned and said she was engaged. Apparently she had met him at some community event they had been dating for a while, and now he had proposed in some romantic way involving candles and a speech. Everyone erupted into congratulations. There was hugging and squealing and the usual "let me see the ring again" moments. I smiled and told her I was happy for her, because that is what you are supposed to say. And honestly, some part of me meant it. I do not hate her, I just do not trust her. After the initial excitement, my mother turned to me and said, "And what about you? Are you seeing anyone?" That question always comes with an edge when you are in your late 20s and single. I shrugged and said not really, that I was focusing on work and myself. My sister jumped in with a laugh. "Of course she is not, Mom. She barely leaves her apartment. She is married to her job and her takeout. There was this little pause. Then my father added, "We do worry about you. You know, your sister is settling down, starting a family one day. You are still—" He trailed off and looked pointedly at my body. He did not have to say it. The implication was loud enough. My mother sighed and did that thing where she pretends she is being loving while twisting the knife. "We just want you to be healthy, honey. It is just, you have put on even more weight since we saw you. It is not good for you. And men can be shallow. You know that." I felt my face heat up. I said I was fine. I said my doctor was fine with my numbers. I said I was doing my best. They nodded in that way. That means they do not believe you. My sister looked at me over her glass of iced tea and said, "Honestly, if you are happy, then whatever. But with the wedding and all, you might want to think about how you are going to look in the pictures." She said it so casually, like she was discussing the weather. That is how the rules started. First it was, "We are going for a very specific aesthetic, for the wedding album. So you cannot wear certain colors because they will clash with the palette." Okay, fine. I could live without wearing certain colors. Then it was, "We really cannot accommodate +1s for everyone. The guest list is already tight, so it will be family only, no partners." Except I found out later that several of her friends were bringing dates, and even a couple of cousins were allowed to bring their partners. When I asked my mother about that, she said, "Well, that is different. They are already in long-term relationships." Translation: your hypothetical person is not real enough to deserve a chair. Then my mother, in that late afternoon kitchen tone she uses when she is pretending to be reasonable, said, "And maybe, just think about it. You could use this as a goal, to slim down a bit before the wedding, so you feel better in the pictures. We could even help. Your father and I would feel so much better knowing you are taking your health seriously." It felt less like they were worried about my arteries and more like they were worried I'd ruin the aesthetic. My sister did not even pretend. "Yeah," she said, leaning on the counter. "I mean, bridesmaids and family are kind of the frame around the main picture. You do not want the frame to be all off, She laughed at her own joke. I did not. "At some point," my mother casually said, "and maybe for the ceremony, it might make sense if you sit a little further back, not in the front row, so the focus is really on the couple. You will still be in the room, of course, but you know how cameras capture everything." She said it like she was talking about furniture placement. I went back to my little apartment with all of that echoing in my head. I sat on my couch, opened a carton of takeout, and I could not bring myself to eat it. Not because I suddenly hated food or had some breakthrough. I just felt heavy in a different way, like I was carrying their voices on my shoulders. I wish I could say I decided to get healthy purely for myself, out of some enlightened self-love moment. That would be a neat story. The truth is, I started because of anger and humiliation. I looked up gyms in my area, called one, and signed up for a membership I could barely afford. I bought sneakers that did not make my knees hurt as much. I booked a session with a trainer named Lena, who had this no-nonsense vibe and arms that looked like she could lift a car. Our first session, I almost passed out. I was red, sweaty, gasping, and deeply aware of how ridiculous I must look. There were mirrors everywhere, which felt like a personal attack. People moved around me, lifting, running, chatting, like this was just another day. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I kept showing up. It was not some straight line. There were weeks where the scale barely moved and weeks where I felt like I was dragging a tired, sore body through wet cement. I sprained my knee once stepping off a treadmill wrong and had to ice it on my couch while my phone pinged with texts from my mother about dress sizes and theme colors. I cried in my car more times than I want to admit after a bad workout or a rough day, feeling like maybe they were right. Maybe I was just meant to be the big, embarrassing background character forever. Lena did not do the whole no pain, no gain nonsense. She said things like, "You are here, that is what matters," and "You are stronger than you think, but you do not have to destroy yourself to prove that." One day when I was ranting about my family and the wedding and how they basically told me I was not fit to be seen, she listened quietly and then said, "You know you are allowed to want this for you and not for them, right?" I shrugged. She said, "Maybe it starts with them, but it does not have to stay with them." Somewhere along the way, the focus started to shift. I noticed I could climb stairs without feeling like my lungs were on fire. I noticed my joints did not hurt as much. I noticed my clothes fitting differently, then not fitting at all. I gave away a pile of old shirts and bought jeans that actually buttoned without me having to lie down on the bed to zip them. I stood in front of the mirror one morning, pulled my hair up into a high ponytail, and did not immediately want to look away. The weight came off slowly, then all at once, then slowly again, like everyone says. It was not just about the numbers. I realized I was standing up straighter. I was looking people in the eye more. I started saying no to things that felt bad, like staying late at work for the 5th time that week just because my boss assumed I did not have a life. I was still me, but there was a little more room, I guess, for my own voice. As the wedding got closer, the messages from my family got more frequent. My mother sent me pictures of dresses she thought would flatter my new shape, all in muted, neutral colors. My sister texted in the family group chat, asking about my travel plans, dropping little reminders about the schedule and who was doing what. There was this constant hum of expectation, like they were staging a show and needed to know if their problematic prop was going to cooperate. A couple of weeks before the wedding, my parents invited me down for a pre-wedding lunch to go over final details. I almost said no. Every instinct I had told me to stay in my city, go to the gym, order my favorite sushi, and let them deal with whatever story they wanted to tell about me. But then I thought about my extended family, the aunts and cousins who had always been kind to me, who had sent cards and little care packages when I was stressed in college. I did not want to disappear from them just because my immediate family did not know how to treat me. So I said yes. I drove down on a Saturday, wearing jeans that fit well and a soft green top that I actually liked, with my hair done in a way that felt like me. When I walked through the front door, my mother looked up from the kitchen and froze. My father, sitting at the table with his coffee, did the same. For a second, nobody said anything. Then my mother said, "Oh my goodness." My father said, "Wow." My sister, who came in from the living room, just stared. It was not the nice kind of staring. It was the kind where people are recalculating things in their head. "You look different," my mother finally said. I smiled and said, "Yeah, I have been working out, trying to take better care of myself." My heart was pounding. I do not know why it felt so vulnerable to say that out loud. My sister stepped closer, actually reached out and poked my arm like she was checking a piece of fruit at the store. "Okay, gym girl," she said, trying to make it sound like a compliment and failing. "You really did it." My father circled me like I was a car he was thinking about buying. "You almost look like a different person," he said. "If I did not know better, I would think you had some kind of surgery." He laughed a little, like it was a harmless joke. "I did not," I said. "I just worked hard. For a long time." My mother recovered quickly. She started asking questions about what I ate, how often I worked out, whether I had a trainer. It was like she was trying to gather data. There was this edge to her curiosity, though, a tightness around her mouth that told me she was not entirely thrilled. We sat down to eat. The whole meal became about my body, my weight, my journey. My sister kept making little comments like, "Watch out, you are going to be smaller than me soon," said with a laugh that did not reach her eyes. My mother said, "This is wonderful, but do not get too extreme. There is such a thing as too thin." My father nodded along to whoever was talking, like he always did. At some point, my sister put her fork down and said, "Okay, but real talk. We do need to talk about the wedding. Because this changes things." I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Changes what?" She waved her hand at me. "Your whole look. I mean, the bridesmaid dresses are picked. The pictures we had in mind for the ceremony, the seating. I did not plan for you to look like this." "I am still me," I said. "I just take up a little less space now." My mother jumped in. "Sweetheart, what your sister means is that the balance of the pictures is different now. The colors, the shapes, all of it. We just need to make sure nothing is distracting from the bride. It is her day." I stared at them. So when I was bigger, I was a problem because I stood out in a bad way. And now that I am smaller, I am a problem because I stand out in a different way? My sister rolled her eyes. "No one is saying you are a problem. You are being so dramatic. We just do not want people focusing on you instead of on me. That is normal for a bride. Right, Mom?" My mother nodded immediately. "Of course. Every bride wants the attention to be on her. It is not personal, honey. It is just how these things are." They started listing adjustments. Maybe I could tone down my makeup. Maybe I should not wear anything too fitted or revealing. Maybe I could wear my hair in a simple bun instead of this striking style I was currently rocking. My sister suggested I skip being in some of the official family photos so the focus would be tighter. My mother gently repeated that sitting a bit further back during the ceremony might help the photographer frame things better. Something in me snapped into focus. Not exploded exactly, just solidified. For years, I had twisted myself into knots trying to be smaller physically and emotionally. I had apologized for existing, for taking up space, for reacting when people hurt me. I had believed that if I tried hard enough, if I was good enough, if I got enough as and made myself useful enough, they would see me as more than a problem to manage. Sitting at that table, listening to my mother and sister rearrange me like furniture, I realized they did not actually want me to be happy or healthy. They wanted me to be convenient, fat, and they needed me to shrink, smaller, and they needed me to dim. No version of me would ever be acceptable if I was not making them look better. I put my fork down. My hands were surprisingly steady. "You know what?" I said. "No." My mother blinked. "No. What?" "No to the extra rules. No to being told what colors I can wear. No to being pushed into the back row. No to being told I am too big or too small or too visible or too anything. I am coming as myself or not at all." My sister scoffed. "You are seriously going to make this about you? On my wedding?" "I am making this about me." "On my life," I said. "I have spent my entire life shrinking and apologizing and letting you all treat me like a problem instead of a person. I am done." My mother gave me that tight smile that meant she was about to say something awful dressed as concern. "We just want what is best for you, honey. You know we love you. It is not our fault if you are so sensitive you take everything the wrong way." I laughed. It came out a little harsher than I intended. "You do not love me. You love what I can do for your image. You love my grades when you can brag about them. You love my weight loss when it makes you look like good parents. But you have never loved me when I needed you to stand up for me. Ever." My father shifted in his chair, like he might say something. But he did not. He never does. "You are overreacting," my sister said. "As usual." "No," I said, and my voice was calm in a way that almost scared me. "For once, I am reacting exactly enough." I pushed my chair back and stood up. My mother said my name, sharp and warning, but I did not sit back down. "Here is the deal," I said. "If I come to your wedding, I will come as I am. I will wear a dress I feel good in. I will sit where I am supposed to sit as your sister, not banished to the back row like an extra. I will exist in pictures without you trying to edit me out of your life. If that is a problem, then I will not come at all. And you can tell whatever story you want about why." Then I picked up my bag and walked out. Nobody followed me. The drive back to my apartment felt surreal. I kept waiting for my phone to explode with calls and texts, but it stayed mostly quiet. A couple of hours later, my mother sent a message in the family group chat about how disappointed she was in my outburst and how I had hurt my sister on the brink of her special day. My sister wrote that I was selfish and always had to make everything about me. My father sent a thumbs-up emoji to one of their messages. That was all. I did not respond. I sat on my couch, ate leftovers straight from the container, and tried to breathe through the mix of anger and grief twisting in my chest. Standing up for yourself does not feel triumphant, by the way. Not at first. It feels like jumping off a cliff and hoping you will eventually grow wings. For a few days, I assumed I was out. I figured they would disinvite me and then tell everyone I had refused to come. I tried to make peace with that. Then, about a week later, my aunt called me. She is one of the few family members who has always treated me like a whole person. She said she had heard there was some drama and wanted to hear my side before she believed anything. I told her what happened. There was a long silence on the line, then she said, "That is awful. I am so sorry. If you decide not to come, I will understand. But if you do come, I would love to see you." That conversation changed something. I realized that my parents did not own the entire story of my life. I had relationships that existed outside of their control. If I stayed away, my mother would absolutely use that as proof that I was the difficult one, the bitter one, the ungrateful one. If I went on my own terms, I could at least show myself and the people who actually cared that I was more than whatever awful narrative they were spinning. So I went. On the day of the wedding, I put on a deep blue dress that fit well and made me feel strong rather than small. It had sleeves, it was not too short, and it absolutely did not blend into the background. I did my hair the way I liked it, added simple jewelry, and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time going to a family event, I did not see a problem to manage. I saw a person who had survived a lot and was still standing. Walking into the venue felt like walking into one of those dreams where everyone turns to look at you. People did stare, but not in the horrified way I had once imagined. Some of my cousins smiled and waved. My aunt practically ran over to hug me, telling me I looked incredible and that she was proud of me. A couple of relatives I had not seen in forever said they almost did not recognize me, but in a good way. My mother approached me with that tight smile again. She reached for my necklace like she was about to adjust it, maybe to fix something. I stepped back. "Please do not touch me," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. There were people around us, watching. She dropped her hand and said, "You look very different," like it was an accusation. "Thank you," I said, and walked past her to talk to my aunt. During the ceremony, I sat where the siblings were supposed to sit. No one physically dragged me to the back row, so that was progress, I guess. I watched my sister walk down the aisle in her dress, surrounded by the exact aesthetic she wanted, and I felt this weird mix of sadness and distance. She looked beautiful. I will not pretend she did not. She also looked like a stranger to me in that moment. At the reception, I made a conscious decision not to orbit my immediate family. I found my cousins, danced with them, caught up on their lives. I talked to people who remembered me from when I was little and told funny stories that did not involve humiliating me. I ate cake without apologizing for it. I laughed, genuinely, in pockets of the night that had nothing to do with the bride and groom. I finally met the groom properly. We had been introduced quickly earlier, but now he came over to where I was standing with a drink in his hand and did the whole charming small talk thing. He asked about my job, my city, whether I was seeing anyone. It was all very surface level. I did not get a great vibe, but I also did not have the energy to analyze him deeply. I kept it polite and moved on. Eventually, the night ended. I drove back to my hotel, kicked off my shoes, and lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling a strange kind of relief. I had shown up on my own terms. I had refused to be rearranged. It did not fix anything with my family, but it did something in me that I needed. A few days later, I got a message on a social media app from a username I did not recognize at first. When I clicked it, my stomach dropped. It was the groom. He started with, "Hey, it is me, from the wedding. Hope you do not mind me reaching out." Then it turned into, "You looked amazing the other night." And, "There is something kind of hot about that whole rivalry you have with your sister." He said he had always been curious about what it would be like to be with the other sister, like I was some alternate flavor on a menu. I just stared at my phone. My first reaction was disgust. My second was this cold, familiar realization. Of course. Of course the man my family had put on a pedestal was texting me behind my sister's back, turning our pain into something exciting. He kept going. "I feel like you get me in a way she does not," he wrote, which was laughable because we had barely spoken. "We should meet up sometime just to talk. No one has to know." He added a winking emoji because of course he did. I did not answer. I took screenshots of every message. Then I blocked him. I wish I could say I marched over to my parents' house and showed them right away, but I did not. I was tired. So tired. Tired of being the one who blew things up by telling the truth. Tired of being the messenger everyone hated. So I saved the evidence and went on with my life as much as I could. Over the next few months, my contact with my family shrank even more. My mother sent occasional group texts with photos of my sister and her new husband doing cute newlywed things. "They are so happy," she wrote once, like she was daring me to contradict her. I did not. Then, about 7 months after the wedding, my phone rang on a random Tuesday night. It was my mother. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. When I answered, she sounded frantic. "She is back home," she said without even saying hello. "Your sister, she moved back in. He cheated on her. Can you believe it? After everything we did for that boy." I closed my eyes. Of course he did. "I am sorry she is hurting," I said. And I meant that. No matter how much damage she had done to me, I did not wish this particular pain on her. My mother launched into a whole rant about how men are pigs, how no one appreciates commitment anymore, how my sister had sacrificed so much, and had been humiliated. Then she said, "And the worst part is, he said some of the messages were with you. Do you know anything about that?" There it was. The angle. Somehow, even with a cheating husband, they had still managed to find a way to drag my name into it. I took a breath. "Yes," I said. "I do." My mother went silent. "You do?" "He messaged me a few days after the wedding," I said. "He said inappropriate things about you and her and the rivalry between us." I did not respond. I blocked him. I have screenshots. I did not say anything because I knew how you would react. "Which, by the way, you are proving right now." My mother sputtered. "How dare you keep that from us? If you had told us, maybe this would not have gotten so far." "Are you serious?" I asked. "The first thing you did just now was ask if I had something to do with this. Not if I was okay. Not if I needed support after being hit on by my brother-in-law, but whether I was part of the problem. You have never believed me when I told you I was being hurt. Why would I trust you with this?" She started crying. Real or not, I was too tired to tell. "Your sister is devastated," she said. She is saying all kinds of things. She says you must have encouraged him, that you always wanted what she has. You need to come home and help fix this. I laughed again, that same harsh sound from the pre-wedding lunch. No, I said. I do not need to do that. My mother's voice went cold. So you are just going to let your sister suffer? She is suffering because her husband is a cheater, I said. Not because I existed in the same room as him. Not because I refused to be erased from your photos. Not because I did not get on board with your aesthetic. She is suffering because she married someone who saw her and her sister as interchangeable toys. I opened my laptop. While my mother was still on the line, I pulled up the screenshots I had saved and forwarded them to her, to my father and to my sister in a group message. Every word he had written to me, every cheap little line about secret meetings and the other sister, all time stamped from days after the wedding. There, I said into the phone. Now you have the truth. Do whatever you want with it. My mother started saying my name, that scolding tone again, but I hung up. Messages started coming in almost immediately. My father wrote, I had no idea. My mother sent a long paragraph about how complicated feelings are, and how I should have told them earlier, and how this was all such a mess. My sister, after about an hour, sent one line. Stay away from me. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I turned my phone off. In the weeks that followed, I heard through the grapevine that my sister's marriage had imploded completely. There were other women, not just me. He had been messaging people from work, from the gym, from random apps. It was a whole pattern. She moved back in with my parents, who now had to deal with the reality that the golden couple they had invested so much in was a disaster. Some relatives reached out to me quietly, saying they were sorry, saying they believed me, saying they had always thought something was off. My parents tried a few times to pull me back into the old role. They sent messages about how family is all we have, and how I should not turn my back on them in this dark time. They tried to guilt me into driving down, into being a shoulder to cry on for a sister who had happily watched me drown for years. I did not go. I answered politely when it felt necessary, mostly to the relatives who had shown me kindness. I sent one message to my parents saying, I hope you are taking care of yourselves. I cannot be the one to fix this. I need distance. Then I muted the group chat. People talk about going no contact like it is flipping a switch, but it is more like slowly turning down the volume on a song that has been stuck in your head your whole life. Sometimes it creeps back in. Sometimes you hear a line and your chest tightens, but over time it gets quieter. I still live in my little apartment with the creaky floors. I still go to the same gym. I still text Lena when I hit a new personal best on something small, like being able to do more push-ups than I could 6 months ago. I still have days where I look in the mirror and see that lonely teenager in the cafeteria covered in spilled lunch, wanting to disappear. But I also have days where I look in the mirror and see someone else layered on top of her, someone who walked out of a house where nobody clapped when she stood up for herself, someone who chose herself anyway. My relationship with my body is still complicated. Some days I miss the old armor of being bigger, as twisted as that sounds. There was a strange safety in being invisible because people were too busy laughing to look close. Now they look. I am still figuring out how to handle that. But here is what I know. My worth was never a before and after story. It was never a number on a scale or the dress size my mother wanted me to be for a photo. It was never about whether my sister felt threatened by me standing next to her at an altar. It was not something my parents had the authority to hand out or revoke. They spent years trying to make me smaller. Smaller in body, smaller in voice, smaller in presence, smaller in the frame of every picture. I thought losing weight would finally make me fit into the space they had for me. Instead, it showed me that the space they were offering was too small for who I actually am. So I stepped out of the frame. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I am starting to feel like there is enough room to breathe, to be angry when I need to be soft when I want to take up exactly as much space as I do without apologizing for it. I do not know if my parents will ever understand that. I do not know if my sister will ever forgive me for not collapsing into the role she expects. But I am finally done waiting for them to change before I start living like I deserve better. That is the part nobody tells you about setting boundaries with family. It is not about punishing them. It is about giving yourself a chance to exist without constantly being edited. And if that means I am the villain in their version of the story, well, they were never very good at telling mine anyway. After I turned my phone back on a few weeks later, there were more messages waiting that I pretended not to see for a while. My mother had sent a long one about how no family is perfect and how they had made mistakes, but that shutting them out wasn't healthy. My father sent something shorter about how he wished we could go back to how things were, as if How things were hadn't been a slow-motion demolition of my self-worth. My sister hadn't written anything else after that "stay away from me," which honestly told me everything I needed to know. I thought about answering. I sat there with my fingers hovering over the screen, half composing 100 different responses in my head. The polite one, the rage-filled one, the sarcastic one, the therapist-approved one. In the end, I did not send any of them. I put my phone face down on the table and decided that silence, for once, could be my answer. Silence gets interpreted however people want, by the way. In my parents' version, I am sure it turned into proof that I am cold and heartless and ungrateful. In mine, it was the first time I had ever refused to step onto the stage they built and read the lines they handed me. It felt weird and empty and shaky, but it also felt strangely honest. Around that time, I finally dragged myself to therapy. Not the casual, I should probably go one day kind of thought. Real, actual therapy, with an actual person sitting across from me in a small office with a box of tissues in the middle of the table like a warning label. I found her through a general search, went through the list, picked a name at random, and almost canceled 3 times before my first appointment. She asked why I was there, and I instantly thought, "How much time do you have?" Out loud, I said something like, "My family is a mess, and I think I spent my entire life believing it was my job to fix them." Then I laughed to fill the silence, because that is what I do when I feel exposed. She did not laugh. She just nodded and said, "Tell me about them." So I did. I dumped out cafeteria floors, missing homework, wedding rules, text messages from my sister's husband, all of it in this tangled story that had no neat beginning or end. Every time I paused to apologize for talking too much or for sounding dramatic, she shook her head and said, "You do not have to apologize. This is your space." Nobody had ever said that to me before. Not really. Not without some unspoken condition attached. We talked about boundaries, obviously. Therapists love that word. I always thought boundaries meant screaming at people and cutting them off forever. Dramatic movie scene style. Turns out, a lot of the time, it is boring. It is not responding to a text right away. It is changing the subject when someone tries to drag you into gossip you do not want. It is saying, "I am not available," and not writing a 4-paragraph explanation filled with apologies. We also talked about the word jealous, because that one still stuck to my ribs. My therapist asked what it meant to me when my parents accused me of being jealous of my sister. I told her it felt like they were calling me petty and small for wanting basic respect. She nodded and said, "Maybe you were jealous sometimes. That is human. But jealous of what? Her ability to hurt you without consequences. That is not the same as wanting what she had." I sat there and stared at the fake plant in the corner because looking at her felt too intense. "I think I was jealous of how safe she seemed," I said slowly. Like the world had a softer spot for her to land. Like she could mess up and someone would always rush to defend her. And if I got hurt, it was somehow my own fault. Saying that out loud hurt in a way that was almost physical. But once the words were out, I could not take them back. And there was something weirdly freeing about that. Meanwhile, life kept happening outside of my little emotional earthquake. My job did not pause just because I was busy unpacking my childhood in a therapist's office. I still had invoices to process, emails to answer, an office kitchen to clean when everyone else mysteriously forgot how sponges worked. My boss still dropped urgent tasks on my desk at 4:45 in the afternoon like time was a suggestion. The difference was that I started pushing back, just a little. When my boss asked if I could stay late again, just this once for the 4th time in 2 weeks, I said, "I can help for 30 minutes, but I do have plans after that." My plans were going home, eating leftovers and staring at the wall, but that still counted. He blinked like no one had ever said no to him in a full sentence before, then said, "Okay, that works." Tiny boundary, tiny win. It felt better than it should have. My coworkers noticed the changes before I did. One woman from accounting pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "You seem different lately, in a good way. Like you are less, apologetic about existing." She said it kindly, not as a dig. I laughed and said something self-deprecating. But on the bus ride home, I thought about her words for a long time. That is the weird thing about changing your life. From the inside, it feels like chaos and overthinking and therapy homework. From the outside, it looks like you suddenly standing a little taller when you walk down the hall. Around the end of that year, one of my friends from college came to visit. She had always been the kind of person who made everything feel like an adventure, even grocery shopping. We spent the weekend eating too much, walking around the city, and talking until way too late about everything and nothing. On the last night, We were sitting on my couch in sweats, faces sticky from sheet masks we were pretending actually did something, when she asked, "So, are you ever going to date again, or are you married to your own drama now?" I groaned. Why would I introduce a new person into this mess? I just got a tiny bit of peace. She laughed. You also deserve to be loved by someone who is not constantly keeping score in their head. You know that, right? I made some smart comment about my therapist paying her to say that. But the question stuck. I would see couples at the grocery store arguing about cereal in that domestic, annoying way. And instead of rolling my eyes, I started thinking, what if I could have a boring fight about cereal one day instead of another screaming match about who ruined which family event? So I made the classic modern mistake. I downloaded an app. I swiped past a lot of men holding fish in photos, a lot of men whose entire personality was that they went to the gym, and a surprising number of men who wrote, "No drama," in their bio like that wasn't its own kind of drama. I matched with a few people, made small talk that went nowhere, deleted the app twice, then reinstalled it when I was bored. Eventually, I met someone I actually liked. Not fireworks and violins liked. More like, oh, I can be in the same room as you for 3 hours and not want to stab something, which felt huge after everything. He worked in some tech-adjacent job that I barely understood, liked late-night diners, and did not flinch when I talked honestly about my family. He did not try to fix it or minimize it. He just listened and said things like, "That sounds really hard. I am sorry you went through that." We took it slow. For once in my life, I did not rush to contort myself into the version of me I thought someone wanted. I let him see me tired, see me angry, see me quiet. I let myself enjoy small, normal things, like watching a movie on his couch while our legs touched, or going grocery shopping together and arguing about which pasta sauce was better. It felt like practice for a life that did not revolve around putting out my family's fires. I did not introduce him to my parents. I did not even tell them he existed. That felt petty at first, like I was withholding something on purpose. Then I realized it was not about punishing them. It was about protecting myself. Every time I had given them access to something that mattered to me, they had found a way to use it as leverage or ammunition. This time, I kept something for myself. My therapist called that breaking the pattern. I called it not letting them ruin this too. Both descriptions were accurate. Holidays used to be the worst time of year for me. They were when my mother's guilt speeches got longer, and the group messages got more aggressive about my absence. That year, I spent the winter holidays with my friend from college and her extended friend group instead. We did a potluck dinner. Someone brought a sweet potato casserole that could have solved world peace. We played card games and got into loud debates about which cheesy movies were secretly good. At some point in the evening, I realized I had not checked my phone in hours. It was sitting on the counter, face down, probably full of messages I would eventually have to read. But at that moment, it did not own me. That felt like its own quiet victory. When I did finally unlock it later that night, there was the usual. A guilt-laced group text from my mother about empty chairs, a vague message from my father about missing his girls, nothing from my sister. I typed, "Hope you had a good day," and left it at that. No explanation, no apology, no essay. Just one simple neutral sentence. That is what boundaries looked like in real time for me. Less explanation, fewer justifications, more space between their emotions and my reactions. Sometimes I still think about that younger version of me in the cafeteria, standing in front of a room full of laughing kids with pasta on her shirt and milk dripping off her hair, watching her own sister laugh at her too. There are days when I want to somehow reach back through time and pull her out of that room. Sit her down and tell her that she is not crazy, she is not overreacting, and she is not asking for too much by wanting people who are supposed to love her to actually act like it. I cannot do that, obviously, but I can do it for this version of me. I can pick up my own metaphorical tray, wipe off the mess, and walk to a different table. I can choose who gets to sit with me now. My parents still tell a different story. I know they do because relatives slip up sometimes and repeat pieces of it back to me. In their version, they were loving but strict, and I was sensitive and pulled away for no reason. My sister, I am sure, paints herself as the victim of a cheating husband and a jealous older sister who always resented her. In their stories, I am probably difficult, cold, ungrateful, dramatic. But here is the thing. I no longer feel the need to correct every version that does not match mine. I used to burn so much energy trying to convince them to see what they did, to admit how it hurt, to apologize in the exact way I needed. I could spend the rest of my life cross-examining them like a lawyer and still never get the verdict I want. So instead, I built a different life. One where my worth is not measured in how well I play the supporting role in someone else's story. One where my body is not a problem to fix for pictures. One where my voice is not classified as too much every time I use it to say, "That hurt," or "I deserve better," or "No." I still go to therapy. I still mess up my boundaries sometimes and answer texts I should have ignored or agree to calls I do not actually want to have. I still have dreams where I am back at that wedding, except this time I am in sweatpants and everybody is staring, or dreams where I show my parents the screenshots and they laugh and tell me I am making a big deal out of nothing. Trauma has a long memory. It does not disappear just because you finally walked out of the room. But on the mornings after those dreams, I get up, put on my gym clothes, and go see Lena. I lift weights that once scared me. I focus on what my body can do instead of what other people think it looks like. I text my friend from college stupid memes. I curl up on the couch with the man who chooses me without needing me to be smaller for him to feel bigger. I sit in my little apartment with the creaky floors and the wobbly table, and the plants I am somehow managing to keep alive. And I think, this is mine. All of this is mine. My family will probably never understand why I stepped away. They will keep telling their version of the story at holidays and backyard gatherings, and in that story I will be the ungrateful daughter who got too big for her place and walked out when they had done so much for her. Maybe some people will believe them. Maybe some will quietly wonder what really happened. That is not my job to manage. My job now is to take up the space that always belonged to me, to walk into rooms without planning escape routes in my head, to speak without rehearsing every sentence 12 times to make sure nobody can twist it, to sit in pictures without worrying if my arm looks too big, to build a life where the main requirement for staying in it is not that you feel superior to me, but that you are capable of treating me like a person. They spent so many years trying to crop me out of their perfect family portrait. I used to think my only options were to squeeze myself into the frame the way they wanted or disappear entirely. It turns out there was a third option the whole time. I could make my own picture. It does not hang on their wall. It does not get passed around at reunions. It lives in the quiet, ordinary moments of my days now. In my kitchen table covered in grocery receipts and half-finished crossword puzzles instead of unpaid emotional invoices. In the texts from friends who check on me because they want to, not because they are keeping score. In the way I can look at myself in the mirror and see more than just the girl who is always too much and not enough at the same time. They do not have to approve of it. They do not even have to see it. For once, it is not for them. It is for me.